comic books are an important contributing factor in many cases of juvenile.
Up in the sky!
Faster than a speeding bullet.
Holy, here we go again.
Hello and welcome to These Guys Have Issues, the podcast where we discuss current topics and issues within the comic book community. I am your host, Carter Hutchison.
I'm your co-host, Mike Thomas.
And today we have a couple of guests in the studio. Guys, go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Michael Claiborne. What's up, guys? I'm Jake.
And Jake, what's your last name there?
State Farm.
Okay. Jake from State Farm here. He's wearing khakis. No, this is an episode I've been really excited about since we came up with the idea and put it on the calendar and everything. So just a quick background on how we got to this point. The sister show to this show is Classic Cartoon Rewind. And the first cartoon series we're covering in that is the 1940s Max Fleischer Superman show. So I used to work with Claiborne and Jake here. And I was talking to him about it and found out that they, weren't really big Superman fans, but they, y'all definitely have at least one foot in geek culture. You go to the comic book movies, and I know Claiborne, you're a big gamer and everything, so it's not like you're just averse to sci-fi or something like that, right? So upon more questioning, you hadn't really read a Superman comic before, right? Is that fair? Okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
So in order to kind of show them the range of Superman and then what a classic Superman story was, I had each of y'all read 2 graphic novels. The one showing Superman's range was Superman Red Sun, and the one classic Superman story was Superman for All Seasons. So the title of this episode is The Problem with Superman, and the idea was to try to get 2 non-believers, basically, and give them some Superman material to read, come back here, talk about it, and see if it changed your opinion at all. Yeah. So, Claiborne, why don't you start first? Just tell us what your background, I'm sure it's Superman movies or cartoons that you'd seen before, and what your general perceptions of the character were.
Okay, I'd say I'm probably the least knowledgeable person on the podcast right now. I have seen some of the older Christopher Reeves movies, which when I was a kid, and of course I enjoyed them, but I didn't really follow much of them at all. And lately, I'd say I've mostly just been watching a lot of DC animated and some of the newer Marvel movies, but outside of that, I'm not too knowledgeable. I thought Superman as a concept was not the best idea, just because it kind of just seemed to me like this god character that didn't seem it's kind of, how could they make any stories?
Mm-hmm. It's like writing a story for Jesus. How do you make that interesting, right?
Yeah,
exactly. When a guy can turn water into wine,
Spoiler alert.
Right?
That's what it's about, though.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
it could be Jewish. It could be.
It is.
Well,
we'll get into that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
So conceptually, I wasn't a huge fan of them, and even in action, honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of them, except for in a select few DC animated movies.
What were those?
That's going to be the Gosh, now you put me on the
Justice
spot.
League War?
Yeah, Justice League War was
okay.
really
That's
nice.
a good one.
Well, it was just really... Well, I think those were... he wasn't... Even though he was the most powerful one, it was I guess everybody was on the same field, so he wasn't kind of just running the game.
He wasn't flexing yet.
Sure, I guess you could say that too. But I mean, yeah. So I guess that's pretty much it. So wasn't a huge fan of him conceptually. Wasn't a huge fan of him in action. But I will say, I definitely liked what I read. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Man of Steel was pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, about the animated series from the '90s, the Bruce Timm and Paul Dini series.
I recall watching it as a child, but I didn't.
The Justice League cartoon.
Absolutely.
Same. Okay,
and,
just bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces. Yeah.
Okay.
It's that's kind of like how I am with a lot of the older DC stuff, and yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
so,
I'm kind of just now watching a lot of the animated movies. Just now watched War just a few months ago, so it's it's kind of a lot of really new to me.
Claiborne has the DC app, which we blow all the time.
All the time
on the show.
We are sponsored, not really sponsored.
Yeah, I wish they were giving us money.
I like it a lot. I just started Doom Patrol. I'm only 2 episodes in, but
The show Doom Patrol.
yeah.
So
yeah.
Carter
fucking
loves
good.
Doom.
It's so
Doom
good.
Patrol.
Yeah, it's so good.
So far, the app is worth it for only being, I think it's $8 a month.
Yeah, it's like seven, 8, something like that.
Yeah, it's 70 for a year.
There's new stuff every week, and just the amount of comics on that thing is ridiculous. But to summarize, and let me tell you tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth. He's basically like an overpowered Boy Scout. That's kind of your
Yeah,
perception
I didn't
coming in.
realize. I wouldn't have agreed with the Boy Scout thing until after I read For All Seasons.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
wasn't even part of it. He's
No, I kind of just like he was a god character. I didn't know much about his personality, and then I kind of was introduced to it. And of course, I know Red Sun is kind of this huge departure
Sure.
from the regular, so I didn't really take his personality too much from there, which he still was kind of. I mean, until he took over, he
Right.
still was kind of Boy
We'll get
Scouty
there.
in a way.
Right.
We'll get there. But anyway, but yeah. I guess now that does kind of fit.
Okay. Jake, what Superman media had you consumed first, and what were your general perceptions of the character?
So I of course Christopher Reeves. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I watched Smallville growing up. I watched
nice.
Young Justice,
Yeah.
Justice League. So I had a lot of like outlets for Superman.
Okay.
But my more so issue with him is not like that he's so overpowered, because you have a lot of those overpowered like people in
Mhm.
like comics and everything like that. Mine was, I don't really have any relatability to him. You know, when you put him up against, you know, somebody like Batman, somebody even like Green Lantern, you know, they have different aspects of them as people that create who they are.
Sure.
And, you know, with Superman coming in, you know, being a god, being somebody that has all of these powers, and then, like, honestly, one of his biggest weaknesses is himself, that he's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of, like, him trying to reach that perfection, you know, I mean, you see it in All Seasons when he goes home, you know, back after Lex Luthor kind of basically almost kills the entire town.
Right.
You know, I mean, he leaves being a superhero because he fears the whole aspect of him not being perfect.
Mhm.
And I just...
Well, he has very high standards for himself.
Exactly, you know, and at the end of the day, I mean, if you're going to do it, you got to do it. You can't be a little baby about it
Yeah.
and just, like, cry, go home to mom, you know?
Yeah, he does kind of do that in All Seasons, now that you mention it.
Yeah. But, like, there's versions of him that I really do love. Like, I mean, like, his character, I guess, in Smallville, you know? I mean, I love that, and I love...
They get Clark right in that
They
show,
get
at
Clark
least.
right in that show.
He
and
gets a lot of other things wrong, but
Yeah.
they at least get Clark right.
Yeah, and, you know, I liked that whole idea of it, but, you know, conceptually him as an idea is fantastic, you know, like, you know...
And this was your preconceived?
This
before
is-
you
Yeah, this is, well, you know...
before
I
you
mean,
read the issues?
yeah,
Or the books?
I liked Red Sun particularly because it took a different take on who he can be,
Mhm.
and like writing style of like who he could be. Now, All Seasons I thought was great and everything, but at the same time it was like, you know, it just shows like just him as his most basic
It's a
form.
boiled down
Yeah.
superhero or Superman story.
Exactly, you know, and I like that, you know. I mean, I don't know if my viewpoint on him has changed too much, but conceptually, I do see where you can take the character,
Sure.
as opposed to like what we do see in most
From-
media and everything.
Fair
like
enough.
That. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so we're going to get into each book here, but before we do, a quick message from our Patreon. All of Grassroots Comics is funded through our Patreon, patreon.com/grassrootscomics. For as little as $1 a month, you can become part of the Grassroots Comics community, which includes many perks, such as having your name mentioned in this segment of every episode of the podcast, the ability to suggest topics of discussion for shows like These Guys Have Issues, access to the private Grassroots Comics subreddit where members can continue discussions started on the podcasts or start their own, behind-the-scenes access to the GRC studio, and early access to digitally released comics and Classic Cartoon Rewind. So it is the goal of all of us here at Grassroots Comics Productions that one day the Patreon is strong enough where we are able to produce the stories, artwork, and stop-motion animation shorts pitched and selected by the Grassroots Comics community. But the only way that becomes possible is with a strong Patreon. So if you feel that the entertainment value you receive from this podcast is at least worth 25 cents, then please become a Patreon contributor today, and with our powers combined, we can have all of our stories heard. All right, now let's get on with the rest of the show. All right, so the first book that I had y'all read was, and that was the one y'all started with, was Superman Red Sun, right? That's the one both y'all read first?
Yeah.
No, but whatever.
Did you read all seasons first?
I actually read them kind of sporadically because all seasons was separated into 4 seasons. So I kind of read the first season, then I went over to Sun, and then I watched those. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Or excuse me.
Okay, let's talk about Superman Red Sun here. Mike, feel free to join in whenever.
I'm just basking in the glory.
Right, of newbies.
Yeah.
Of our ignorance.
No. It's not your ignorance. It's just the fact that, like, you know, someone who's like I've told Carter this many times. My first superhero introduction was Spider-Man. Until I got into Superman, and Superman became pretty much almost my love for the longest time. And I love Superman. I still do. And for me, when Carter first pitched this idea of what's the problem with Superman, I could tell you right off the bat what was the problem with Superman. But then it made me think of how much more I love Superman because of that. Superman Red Sun is an amazing standalone comic in itself. It shows his vast characterization of where he is in a human aspect and then also as an alien aspect. And to me, I've always bonded with Superman more because he's adopted. And I'm adopted as well.
Nice.
I'm from a different country.
Right.
Live in America now. And so the fact that Superman gets sent by his parents for to be a better life, a better world, and now that I live in the life that I live in now, I think about that and relate to that. And it goes on to more that the fact that that I am a Christian, and this aspect of Superman was supposed to be based upon biblical characters.
Yes.
The two people that created Superman were Jewish. But it was more of a Messiah as in the Jewish religion aspect of it, not as in necessarily the Christianity aspect of it.
It's more like Moses.
Yes,
right?
he was
like
supposed to be
the Nile River.
He was supposed to be the leader of the people, not the savior of the world.
That is an interesting way to change that, because you're right that they're different.
They are
answers,
different.
Right? Like a leader inspires you to be
Better.
more like them,
Exactly.
and a savior just like pulls you out of your own fire.
And in comic books, we can see just Superman being the one who saves everybody. But when he takes the time to take the cat out of the tree, help the lady cross the street, the truth justice, all the right way, all the right way. Yeah. Catch the balloon, or save the kid from in Superman Red Sun when the Daily Planet thing when Bizarro attacks. Saves it, protects the kid in the United States when he is communist. So I always have a special tie to Superman in my heart, and I will always believe that Superman is for the greater good, not supposed to be hindering of everything. And I can understand why people have a problem with Superman, and I can understand that too because...
Which I want to touch on that for a sec. You said you know what the problem with Superman is.
Yeah.
So like from Claiborne's, I would say like he's too overpowered, right? And then from what you were saying is more like he's like unrelatable as a character.
Yeah.
As like a person.
Yeah. But now I can see it as more relatable for you.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
So it's like different
True.
perspectives. You know?
Once you see, and I'm going to get to, I think there's a root question at the end of if someone is negative of Superman, that their perception is different. But we'll get there eventually. But yeah, I do think that Superman is the perfect like immigrant story in America.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that I think Red Sun highlights, is that Superman as we know it can really only exist in America. If he like landed anywhere else, it wouldn't be the Superman
It would not.
that we know.
And that's why I love Red Sun so much. It's because it puts a different aspect on it. Because you think about the trials and tribulations that what Superman does with not just necessarily communism, but with Russia, and then spreading that throughout the world. And then the only place that's resisting that is the United States.
Right.
It's vice versa, and you see the United States struggling, which is something that we never really see.
Because it's flopped.
Yeah, because it's flopped. Yeah, propaganda and stuff like that. But even now, though, I mean, if you think about it, there's not people like in Russia. There's Christians getting persecuted for what they believe in. That happens somewhat in America, but it's not as bolstered as what it is. We're a little more tolerant to things, as in, this is a stretch, but gay marriage and the legalization of gay rights.
Mm-hmm.
In Russia, you get almost
Yeah,
crucified
like
for that.
beaten in the streets and stuff.
So
for
the
it.
fact that it takes Lex Luthor to be president for him to kind of bring up America
Sure.
in a way that is the America that we know,
Mm-hmm.
while Superman has controlled pretty much the entire world at this point. And it's just a total flip-flop of what if Superman actually did in America. Because Superman wants to be, like, it took us that point where saying, this is what Superman was if he was president, and we
Mhm.
get that in some other storylines. But this is the 100%. If Superman was in the United States, this is what the rest of the world would look like instead. And you may have other countries, but at some point, I think Superman flexes more if he's the United States, because that's the way we portray him than what.
without becoming the totalitarian dictator that he does in Red Sun, though.
Yeah.
I think there's this American, maybe it's like part of capitalism or something, but it's this American instinct of pull you up by your bootstrap kind of mentality, where Soviet Russia wouldn't necessarily have that. It's more just the government is constantly expanding.
Yeah.
So when Superman is the government and Superman is constantly expanding, then you end up with the Superman robots that they call them,
Exactly.
and the brainwashed people, right?
Oh, yeah.
Peanut Gallery. Any
Yeah,
thoughts?
I
from,
want a tangent there.
I have a couple thoughts.
Okay.
I would say that I don't know. I thought it was interesting how he embraced communism so just so heavily.
He was raised
And
in
then I do understand that. I guess I don't know. I just thought it was interesting how he went so heavily about it and then kind of just spread it. But
expansion of the Warsaw Pact. What's the things he
He-
stands
I-
for instead of truth, justice, and the American way?
But I
It's
guess
like-
the difference was he was. I guess he could be perceived as benevolent in a way, right? Because he didn't kill. Yeah.
Yes, I do think there is still Superman has a kindness to him still, even in Red Sun.
So it's almost like I guess maybe in his mind he could have been thinking he's
He
totally,
totally thinks he's on the side of right.
totally doing the right thing.
100%.
And
But I do.
And who's
I-
to say that he wasn't in the end?
Agreed.
Because he was
Well,
so smart. I mean,
Mm.
And also, who's to say that he didn't make the world better? I mean, there was no crime, there was no anything
Yes.
like that. So he created the perfect utopia, the perfect idea of
Yes.
socialism. But
it's more Brave New World than
Yeah,
but is it-
1984.
exactly.
isn't
Yeah.
also the whole, another part of it kind of like how he could potentially be blamed for the chaos that's going on in America because it wouldn't be happening without his expansion.
Right.
Well, I think it's directly correlated. I think that was the point inside the actual comic book was him America being so just down and just have shanty towns everywhere and everything like that, just completely destroyed just simply because the alternative is getting better, it's increasing.
Well, and
It's
it mirrors what
making it
happened
better.
in history, in that in real life, the Cold War, Soviet Russia was trying to expand across the globe, and the U.S. ends up fighting all these proxy wars with them, right? Korea and Vietnam and so much. It's the same way in Red Sun, but just reversed. That Russia is expanding, but the United States is suffering economically, and you're right. It does take Lex Luthor's presidency to bring them out of that. One thing I think that's interesting about Red Sun, and you'll see this in really kind of any alternate Superman take, is that the check to Superman's power is always Batman.
Yeah.
And that was one interesting thing to me about Red Sun. One, it's perfect that Batman is the boy at the beginning of the book that Peter murders his parents in front of, right?
Yeah.
So you don't even know that at first, that's a young Bruce. So then when he comes up, it's just even more poetic. And then the time travel ending. What were y'all's thoughts at first when you first read that?
I loved it. I like the idea of of him essentially being his own relative. you
Yeah,
know?
so that would make Superman a descendant of Lex and Lois,
Lex and Lois,
Mhm.
exactly.
because
Yeah.
Jor-El was their great 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 grandson or whatever.
I was a little confused, and
Really?
I was kind of hoping this would come up.
Yeah,
because,
it's a time paradox. Luthor creates such a utopia, and that is when Superman decides to get out of the way. right? Because we remember that he doesn't actually die.
Yeah.
And he like shows up to like Lex's funeral or whatever, but he's like disguised as Clark Kent essentially. So when Superman was able to get out of the way, Lex becomes his best self. And that's something the comics touch on a bunch as well. That if there wasn't a Superman, Lex Luthor would be this like great philanthropist that wouldn't have this like constant albatross like hanging over him.
Yeah.
That kind of leads into one of the points of why I have a problem with Superman.
Okay.
It's because Superman is portrayed as the man of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But if Superman was never there, then we would be the man of tomorrow. We would be able to find our own way.
Mm.
You know, there's several books, not to mention Red Sun and All Seasons, that talk about Superman achieving great feats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of them is All-Star Superman, which is the one that I actually pitched to Carter for y'all to read.
Yes.
I'm not saying that would have been better, because on all aspects, that would have been better for a first-time reader to read, would be All Seasons.
Oh, All
not
Seasons.
All-Star.
Okay, fair enough.
But there are some aspects of All-Star where you get Superman's true nature, and then you get what he would actually be if he left his knowledge to us. And so and spoiler alert, if you haven't read it yet, Superman
Or
dies.
seen the animated
Or
series.
seen the animated
There's a
series.
movie on the app.
He dies at the end because he gets
The
radiation.
movie opens up with him having to like throw some villain into the sun or
He
something
gets radiation
like that.
poison.
And
That's
yeah,
the-
he gets
that's the
cancer.
gist of it,
He gets
yeah.
cancer.
And so he's like living his last days, teaching everyone else. Actually gives a serum to Luthor that gives him the power of Superman. This is what you could have, but you can never see that because I was always here. And when he leaves, it kind of gives the aspect of what Luthor could be.
Mm-hmm.
And then without even having that storyline, you can get a fact of that Lex is always bitter. He's
Yes.
always been one of those people that says humanity should save humanity from itself, not someone else.
Or that it's Lex's job to do it. He is a narcissist, so like when someone else is getting the glory that he perceives he should get, then he reacts negatively, like
Exactly.
wanting to kill Superman.
Exactly. And so the Man of Tomorrow aspect is we want to achieve to be like Superman, but we will never be Superman. So we have to pretty much achieve to be like what Lex Luthor is,
Yeah.
but not as bitter. But we never get that in the comics. So that's one of the problems that I kind of stem
Maybe
from.
not the monthlies. Did you ever read Lex Luthor Man of Steel?
Yeah, I mean
That's a great book.
It's a good book. And
That's
Rebirth.
completely from Lex's perspective. So you're in Lex's head when he's like viewing Superman. It's really interesting.
And Rebirth has done a good job of kind of taking up
Yeah.
Lex Luthor saying, "I'm the Superman."
Well, because he wasn't a bad guy to begin with
Exactly.
in Rebirth.
Exactly. So Rebirth follows the 52 storyline.
That gets real continuity because he's
Exactly.
honoring the death of 52 Superman by like
Yeah.
wearing his cape, but there's Rebirth, which is like pre-52. I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah,
That gets real.
It's really short if you really
messy.
think about it. The Superman that died from Doomsday is not the real Superman that comes back. The real Superman is the one that comes back. in
Dude, any
Rebirth.
like layman, like their eyes are just.
No, I'm serious. It's cut and dry. Like Superman dies. He legit dies. He's not.
Except not really. He goes in the pocket universe because of Convergence, and that's where him and Lois have their son,
And that's the Superman that comes back in the black suit.
Right.
It's like,
which
hey,
has been
I'm
kind of
here.
hiding out apparently.
Yes, because he wants. It's almost like if you look at the.
Dude, this is messy.
No, it's not. If you look at the Emperor Crisis storyline, where Superman from Earth 2 is in the pocket dimension, watching everything that's going on with our Superman.
Okay, but the new 52 Superman dies, but it's not like the regular Superman.
I know,
So
and that's what sparks Rebirth.
right.
Yeah. So
That's messy.
it's,
Okay,
it's easy if you.
Our
Could,
producer's giving us the move the fuck
Oh my
along sign,
gosh.
so we're moving the fuck along here.
it's really easy if you want it to be easy.
Any other Red Sun thoughts before we move on to All Seasons real quick?
Who's exactly the protagonist of Red Sun? Is it Superman or is it
that's
Lex
a great
Luthor?
question.
I actually think it's Brainiac, but that's just a hot take.
Oh, okay.
It's a hot take.
I
That's a,
can-
that's a
I
good
kinda
take
like
on
that.
it, yeah.
I like the twist that Brainiac was like never on his.
Exactly.
on,
Just throwing
Superman
out that Hal
side,
Jordan's
like-
the protagonist.
That's that. You can see that.
He
Maybe
was
Wonder
the-
Woman
He
even.
was the most noble.
He was the
Um,
most noble.
But
Well,
like, Wonder
I mean,
Woman
I
has
guess
to
Wonder
change her
Woman
heart.
is, yeah.
She has to change her heart, and like eventually comes around after she sees that like Superman's lack of empathy for her breaking the lasso of truth and her bracelets and everything like shows that he doesn't have the like empathy to lead really anymore. So that's when she loses her faith in him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think it's also understandable everybody's fear well, not everybody's, but a lot of people's fear that Superman doesn't die, so he would rule forever. So it's almost better to have an evil human ruler than a seemingly benevolent alien, all-powerful god.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So Superman for all seasons. This was the, just the essential essence Superman story. It's one of my favorite artist and writer combos, Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale. Just thoughts on the book in general. Did we start with you? We started with Claiborne first last time, right? Jake, you want to start? Thoughts on All-Star Superman. I'm sorry. Superman for all seasons.
Superman for all
There we
seasons.
go.
I know it's one you wanted to read.
I liked it.
You're going to laugh later. Actually, I have a quote from Grant Morrison. Who's the guy that wrote All-Star Superman.
That's hilarious.
My favorite part of the whole comic was the illustration.
Yes.
Yeah, like
I agree.
I mean, in all honesty, I loved the the description in the background, and then like the non-description in the faces. So like,
the people are minimalistic, and then you see like a pile of old shoes in the like Kent farm or something.
Oh yeah.
So the background is extremely detailed.
The beautiful like tornado, like I mean, all that. I did like it a lot. I mean, it's the most basic form of Superman I've ever seen.
It's an origin story, really.
And it's honestly about Superman, but Superman isn't the one telling the story.
It is so it's 4 seasons if you haven't read it, and each season is told by a different person in Superman's life, their perspective. So like the first one is Pa Kent,
It's
right?
Pa Kent, yeah.
And then the second one is
Lois.
and then
The third is
The third Lex.
Lex. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And then the fourth is
Lana.
Lana.
Oh, great. Okay,
Yeah,
it's been a while since I've read that, but
my favorite by far.
really,
Yeah.
how
Yeah,
come?
the fourth season
Why
was
was,
definitely my favorite.
Why was
I
the
just,
Lana perspective here?
I thought it was heartbreaking because, I mean, Superman's obviously this. I mean, he's a great guy. He's a Boy Scout. He's wonderful. He's positive. He admits to her that he has these powers. And
This is when they're like floating above the like cornfield and everything, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it crushed her world because
Yeah.
now that ruins the possibility of a normal future,
Yes.
a normal person. And I guess I didn't. That's not something that I had ever considered before. It seems like who wouldn't want to. I even think that Lois says that in the second one where she says that he's the perfect or the perfect man doesn't exist, and then Superman comes along, right?
Right, and how that ruins her perception of.
Yeah, exactly.
Men.
So you'd think that you'd almost think that Lana feels the same way. She'd rather have a normal relationship with a normal person, not some.
Well, she's the hometown girl next door, right? Whereas Lois is the bustling.
Which is exactly why she's better for.
Oh, you prefer Lana over Lois?
No, I'm saying I think that Lois is better for Superman because she is more of a bustle type girl. But it was very heartbreaking to see Lana kind of in that position where she was kind of like, oh, I wish this was all a dream. I should just wake up and it was, it was.
It would be simpler.
I was telling Clark how crazy this is. Yeah, so that's to me in terms of just how I felt. I brought the most emotion out of me.
Interesting.
I liked. I mean, and also too. I mean, Lex's part coincides with that too. I mean, his first thing he says in the thing, I believe, is like, "This is a love story."
Right, yeah.
Superman
not
is
between
a love
like
story.
a person, between a man and his city.
A man in a city,
Yeah.
and like, it's Lana. I think realized that she would never have Superman because there is that love for like the better good, like the greater good. I mean,
Sure, it's like falling in love with like a Navy SEAL or something like that. They're gonna get called into danger and stuff. And, like,
Exactly.
You're gonna be waiting up, and wondering if they're okay, and you can't have that.
You know?
Or can like Superman even have like children with a human woman being an alien? There's all sorts of different questions would pop up, right?
Also, her life could be in danger.
Constantly.
If someone wants to hurt Superman, well, there's
Best way to get to him is
someone vulnerable around him.
Yep.
Exactly.
I love all seasons, especially the artwork, like you were saying. It's just like pure Americana. Like it's Norman Rockwell, it's fucking baseball and apple pie.
Angels in the outfield. Sorry.
Get out of here, Angels in the outfield.
I mean, it's
Americana, baseball.
No, I'm just saying in an aspect it is.
As in, like, the savior? Explain that.
They build it, they will come. Superman's like, I'm going to build
that's
this.
Field of Dreams.
Sorry, yeah, my bad.
Okay, I'm thinking with the kids
Yeah, my
flapping.
bad,
That's
sorry.
why
I didn't know
reacted.
where you were
So,
going with that.
right.
I apologize.
That's why I
World.
reacted. So
I was excited to
apologize.
see where you were taking.
But
I apologize, World.
you know, it's like it's almost like a western, like a John Ford movie with John Wayne or something. Yeah, I read this here in my notes. It's a western in tights. It's a city mouse that moves to the big city, and the only like real hang up in that is this guy happens to wear like a big red cape when he's in the big city.
Exactly.
You guys had said earlier that he ran away to home or something like that. Ran away to mom.
He gets like defeated at first, right, by Lex, and then he does go back to Smallville to kind of like figure
To
himself
regroup,
back
I guess.
out. Yeah.
I do think that is like kind of what he does, but I mean, I guess in a way I get it. He calls it
his
his
human
fortress of
insight.
solitude. It's like I don't know. I feel like he wants to be the hero and he wants to do all these things and he does do it, but at the same time, I feel like he almost wishes that he didn't have the powers and he was just a normal kid in Smallville.
Agreed. So, and this is my main question. I think that people who have the view that y'all came into, this experiment with of Superman, that he's, overpowered or non-relatable. The ultimate question to me is, who is the real person? Is it Superman or Clark Kent? And I think most people that when they see the movies or just like peripherally know about Superman, to them, Superman is the real person. Would you say that was y'all's viewpoint coming into this, or am I making sense there? Does that?
I don't think I understood your question. Yeah.
So who is the real person inside? Is it Superman? You ever seen Kill Bill Volume 2?
I get what you're saying now.
You ever seen Kill Bill?
Mm-hmm.
Bill has that monologue towards the end. It's like, he wakes up and he's Superman. He doesn't have to put on a costume or anything. But like his actual disguise is Clark Kent when he puts on the glasses. And what are the attributes of Clark Kent? He's weak. He's mild-mannered. He's nervous. So that is like Superman's perception of the human race. Any thoughts on that? I'm not saying right now that I agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I guess it's all up to interpretation. My thing is, I think he was Clark Kent, and I think eventually he became Superman. And I don't think it was when he put on the suit. I think it was. I mean, I don't know.
I would say
my opinion is I feel like most likely throughout his journey there was a point to where he was now Superman.
Thoughts?
I mean, 4 seasons like showed that like he was Clark Kent. Like, I mean, he didn't develop his powers until like later on.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah, there's a whole like 12 years or something.
Yeah.
Like this.
Well,
I
he's
guess
about
in
to
some
graduate.
some continuity, he like lifts cars as a baby and whatnot.
Yeah. So they obviously knew something was different about him.
Sure.
But
The arriving in a spaceship was a good clue.
It was a little tip off.
That's not how you guys got here.
No, yeah.
I don't
We need to
know, I was
explain
adopted,
where
so-
babies come from. When a man loves a woman, the woman puts that baby in a space pod and jettisons it towards another planet with a different colored sun.
That's how I got here. So, go.
Exactly.
Mm.
Okay, yeah, so Mike, you said you're adopted.
Yes.
What country was your country of birth?
Paraguay. It's right below Brazil in South America.
Do you consider yourself a Paraguayan?
I do.
What do you dream in? All right, so and I'm asking dream because I dated a Russian girl in high school briefly, and she would say that like her thoughts were in Russian, and so like every time she's like converting her thoughts into English to speak. So like that's her inner self, right? Is Russian. So your inner self would be
Well, you got to remember, when did Sonya come over here?
well as an adolescent or something.
Yeah, so I was 6 months old when
I
I
know,
got adopted.
and that's exactly the point I'm making.
Yeah.
So say the answer I want you to say.
I don't dream in Spanish
Okay.
because I never learned Spanish.
Would you put yourself down as a Paraguayan or as an American first?
Paraguayan first.
Really?
Yeah.
That is interesting.
Just
you totally messed
because-
up my answer.
Well, okay. I'll play devil's advocate for you.
No, okay,
American.
yeah.
Because when people ask me where you're from, I say I'm from Alabama.
Okay.
Because just to go into aspect of saying, I'm actually from a small Hispanic country called
Sure.
Paraguay. Oh, where's Paraguay? Oh, it's in South America. Is that next to Ecuador? No,
Probably not.
it's like right below Brazil. You ever heard of Uruguay? They're a little bit more famous because of soccer.
Right.
So that's how I kind of explain it. So I just say I'm from Alabama, and then people will start to divulge into that. Say you don't sound like you're from the South.
Yeah.
I'm like because I'm really
I get that a lot,
not.
too.
And so
Right.
I say I'm Paraguayan.
Sure, but your accent could have easily been picked up here, like if you had an accent.
Oh
You know
no!
what I
When I
mean?
get drunk, I get a country accent like no one else. I mean, I sound like a Barner.
Roll
when I
Tide.
get-
We just immediately insulted the other one's school.
God dang it, man!
Okay, but that's kind of my point. That like, yes,
I don't dream in Spanish. I
Right.
don't dream in Kryptonese.
I don't think Clark dreams in in Kryptonese either. To me, like that just shows that his inner person, if you ask Superman, who are you really? Like he's Clark Kent on the inside.
I don't know though, because
Really?
yes, and that's where I wanted to sink all of y'all's input in on that because I feel that Superman throughout his entire time has always been Superman, and Clark Kent is something he adapts later on because when he's living with Ma and Pa Kent, he's Superman. He's not
Really?
Clark. He's
I
not
think
Clark.
he's just Clark,
No, he's Superman because he knows.
and it makes him more interesting to me.
Another one of the things that I wanted to pitch to y'all to read was Superman Earth 1 because it gives
Yeah.
a different aspect of Superman.
Right.
Superman lives in Smallville his whole life. He doesn't go to a prominent college. He goes to Smallville Community College or Metropolis Community College. I can't remember what it is. He doesn't even think about becoming a writer for the Daily Planet. He's just kind of like, he can have any job he wants to in the world. He's pretty much like Tony Stark. He's the smartest man in the world. He goes into, let's say, he goes into Apple. Apple's trying to solve this problem. He figures the problem out. They say, how much money do you want? He said, well, money's not an object. And they say, write down any amount of money that you want on this piece of paper and we'll offer it to you. And he doesn't write anything down. And they write down something. He looks at it. He just puts it down and walks away. So we get a sense of like Clark has already had, or Superman has already had the knowledge of what Krypton is. He knows everything there is to know about this world from what these crystals have taught
Does
him.
Earth One show when he learned that knowledge? Like, was he 12, 13 when he discovers like the spaceship in the barn? That's like a classic image.
I think in Earth 1, and I apologize if I get this wrong, but Martha and Pa Kent tell him about it when he is of age to know what it means. So they
like teenager,
actually
like you're becoming a teenager. You're
no.
coming out of high school.
I'm talking like when he knows what an alien is
Okay.
and what knows. So the reason why I gravitated towards more of it is because my parents told me that I was adopted. It was when I was able to understand what the word adopted meant. And in this aspect of the book, they are able to tell Clark what the word alien means, what the word spaceship means. He understands it to the fact that they show him the ship. They take him. He doesn't just discover it. They take him to see it, and he learns the knowledge of his home world then. And so he has, I think he's 22 or 23 at this time when Earth 1 picks
Quick
up.
question.
Okay.
Did your Paraguayan parents name you first?
They did.
So what was your...
So my birth name was Mario Valdez.
So that's your Kal-El,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but like you would never introduce, like you don't, in your inner monologue, it's not like Mario's.
When I learned that my name was Mario Valdez and I am adopted to a white family, I was like, wow, Mom and Dad, you really just took all of my heritage away from me.
To make Michael Thomas.
Exactly. The whitest of white names you could think of. And it's so funny because Carter and I went to high school together. There was, at one point when we were freshmen, there was 3 Michael Thomases in my high school.
Yeah.
And so 2 of them played football.
How
I was in
many?
band.
How many of the other ones were people
None,
of color?
none.
Right. Okay.
So like there was only 2 people that were 3 people that were Hispanic at the time.
In the band?
No, in the school.
Jesus.
In
really?
the school. My sister and Aaron Newton and I. Those were the only people that were Hispanic at the time.
Wow.
Then, of course, when the grade below us, they got some more Hispanic people in there.
I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Quick tangent.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, where were we? So, but I think that when you do that kind of storytelling, when you make Superman the person who he is, like underneath everything, that makes him less interesting. The Superman is more interesting when
He's humanized.
Clark is like
Yes.
the real person.
And that's why I think that's one of the problems with Superman.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
that was my point to get to.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we just had different
Yeah,
different
no,
ways
we just
to get
had
to the same
a river
answer.
that 4 different ways.
So would y'all say that your perception changed as far as like who the real person is underneath, or was that even something you like even really like thought about between Red Sun and All Seasons?
I thought about it, like going off of more what y'all talked about also, I feel like the people who make Clark Kent are the people that surround him. Like, he is always Superman. But the people that make him Clark Kent...
In the same way that Peter Parker is always Spider-Man.
Is always Spider-Man. Yeah, exactly.
But he's Peter Parker, like, when you boil it down.
Yeah, I guess that's a good example, too.
And he has as good of a, like, supporting cast as Superman does.
But the thing was, though, we had Peter Parker before Spider-Man. We had Superman before Clark Kent.
You mean just, like, chronological...
No. I'm just saying, like, we had Peter Parker as a person before we knew anything about Spider-Man.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. We knew Superman before we knew Clark Kent.
Yeah, even the cartoon. It was like,
Max Fleischer stuff.
Long ago on the planet Krypton, the race of Superman. Yeah.
So we get a good backstory of who Peter Parker is, which the reason why I think you brought that up is because we're going to go ahead and say that DC's is Superman and Marvel's is obviously Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think they're both the... I'm sorry, I'm just seeing Huey's messages to me. He says your birth name sounds like a drug cartel leader.
Oh, it does. I'm okay with that. And I'm also contemplating
racist.
if I ever did like not go to school for anything, then I would be a drug lord.
Word. It's your backup.
Yeah,
it's your backup plan. Why not?
Everybody's got to have a backup plan.
What the hell?
FBI, please don't be listening to this.
Right. What the hell was I talking
If
about?
our perception of Superman had changed before or after.
Right. Because I think that's just the essential question that, if it's like why Thor isn't like to me that interesting of a character to read in the comic. Like, how do you relate to an Asgardian god, right? And Thor, like, literally never, as Huey says, never takes his cape off. Whereas Clark, he has a day of flying around Superman, and like he eventually has to go home to his apartment with his wife. And I'm sure like Superman probably has to do the laundry and stuff every now and then. Like, I can't see Thor.
So who would he rather be? So is that like more of a question?
I think Superman would rather be Clark as well. Like,
so
and that's something that shows that I think Red Sun does a really good job of showing is most of what makes Superman Superman that we think of is Ma and Pa Kent, is Jonathan and Martha Kent. Without that like middle America upbringing, he's not the same character that we know.
But you say that because we're introduced to Superman as truth
Right,
and justice
and-
the Ma way.
Yes.
But if Ma and Pa Kent brought him up in Soviet
Sure.
Russia,
Right.
he's
Let's say they were neo-Nazis.
truth and justice
Right.
in a communist way.
Right. Right, but that's what Red Sun does.
Yeah.
It shows you it's his upbringing
Yeah.
that affects how he perceives power.
Until he gets older.
I would still disagree with that because I think that Superman, you don't see like regular continuity Superman deciding like, well, if I just took over Metropolis, there really wouldn't be any crime to have to like stop. So why don't I just like overlord this city? And then, well, that was working so great in Metropolis. Like, why not just the United States? And man, that was working really great in the United States. So let's just like run the world.
Maybe because it flies in the face of democracy, but in Red Sun, it kind of worked out because communism, breeds dictators.
There's a really good video game. It actually came out with 2 video games and a really good comic book line called Injustice. Gods Among Us.
It's funny you mentioned that. Huey just texted me about that.
Yeah, because Superman pretty much becomes a dictator in the United States.
But what happens first?
Yeah, a tragic event happens where his Lois
gets tricked into killing Lois.
And his unborn child.
And Lois is Superman's,
Lightning
adult
rod?
Superman's tie to humanity. So when you take that away, as Huey just messaged me, Lois dying is the death of Clark. And so then once that happens, you're left with only Superman. And that's what you get with only Superman, is an overlord.
In the animated series, the Justice League, you get the Justice Lords.
Yeah.
Lois does not die. Flash is the one that dies. He kills Lex.
Okay.
Lex
so
kills
Flash. It takes
somebody to die.
Personal loss of his for him to think that he needs to like overreach his powers.
Because he is trying to be human when in fact he's not. He should never think in that aspect of being human.
Are you saying that when he tries to become like the Overlord is his like human instincts?
No, when he becomes the Overlord, he's tried so much to be human that he's given up on it. He's like, I have to save humanity from itself. And then that point is when he becomes the Overlord. If he never has a tie to humanity, maybe we get a different version of Superman. Like in the Max Fleischer special, you see him as Clark Kent who works there, but you see him more as Superman than you do anything with Clark Kent. He's
Right.
always saving the damsel in distress, and I think that's what we get the first perspective of Superman. Now, when you get everyone else's vision of what Superman could be and what could not be, I think when you get All Seasons, when you get Injustice, when you get Red Sun, you get all these takes of like, wow, Superman could really be like this. And in fact, we're not really talking about Clark Kent anymore. We're talking about Superman, because it's not Clark Kent who's going to be like this. It's going to be Superman who's going to be like this. In Kingdom Come, even, Superman has given up hope on humanity because they feel that Magog is
Right, a
better
more
for
violent justice.
yeah, and that's what. And to me, you're thinking about, well, you have this all-powerful hero who hasn't even taken that step yet. It's almost like we want him to take that step. We want
True.
him to be that person because his creation was supposed to be the savior and leader of the people, not of the world. Like, we don't need him to save him from ourselves. We just need him to guide us along the way. We need him to be this guy that will bring us to the promised land. We
Sure.
don't need him forever.
Well, and that kind of ties into like his actual origins in the first few issues of Action
Yeah.
Comics. He was like basically a social justice warrior in like
Exactly.
the truest sense of the word, like
Yeah.
an actual
He was
warrior.
He was breaking up domestic violence.
Yeah, well,
He-
we went over the villains of Action Comics. Number
Yeah.
one is like a slumlord, an abusive husband,
And a lynch. I think.
and what?
I think it was a lynching. I think I just saw the
No, but actually, in real life, Superman did help stop the KKK once.
He did. And he
But that's
actually-
a completely different. That
he
like
was-
ties to the
He was
radio
one of the
program.
only other people that punched Hitler besides Captain America.
No, I mean in like the real life KKK.
Speaking of,
Yeah, no, like there's a
Yeah,
story
there's a
around the
storyline.
radio play where that Superman was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, look it up if you're curious about it. It's an interesting story. Okay, so y'all need to add anything to that at all? True Self, Clark or Kal-El?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, well, I mean, who is Superman? Is he Kal-El? Or is he, is he that version of...
Well, I think that's the question. And which do you find more interesting? Because we're talking about the problem of Superman here, right? So, I think that addresses your feeling that he is unrelatable directly. That Superman has a boss. Like Superman has to go into like the Daily Planet at like a certain time every day.
Clark
and
has a
like,
boss.
yes, excuse me. Okay, thank you.
See, there
Clark
we
has
go.
a boss.
But
That's the real person. Like if he didn't care about that, if he just wanted to be Superman all the time, then he just. Why would Superman need a job?
That's the thing, though. We're not. We as the reader, we care about what Superman is. It's not Clark Kent. It's not. The comic is not Clark Kent. We're not. Clark Kent as a character is great, but if Clark Kent is just Clark Kent, we never have Superman.
Well, yeah.
So, Superman is what I'm drawn to look at. That's
Right.
what I want. And the problem with that is that you have, we've already mentioned it already, this all-powerful, this someone we can't relate to. I mean, even me, it's a stretch just because I'm adopted. If I wasn't adopted, then, probably I wouldn't like Superman as much. But there's different aspects of what Superman is that separates himself from Clark Kent, which makes it, in a sense, where you become that Thor. I mean, we just got Captain Marvel's released in the theaters. A lot of people didn't know who Captain Marvel was. She's this godlike character from Marvel. Now,
Yeah, the real Captain
the
Marvel.
real Captain Marvel.
Right.
We-
He rolled his eyes.
And we get the sense of like a god character who's finding her way, in which we don't ever get. We just get Carol Danvers later,
Right.
and that's pretty much what Superman was. We get Superman first. We get Clark Kent later, and
But like Superman was like a baby though. There's not like he has no
I
like
know.
conscious memory of
but you
Krypton.
you have to remember when we were introduced to Superman, we got Superman first, then Clark Kent.
In movies or
In general,
comics,
period.
or-
Like Superman does not appear as Clark Kent first; he appears as Superman.
What's the beginning of Man of Steel? Isn't it?
I'm talking about the very beginning of Superman, not like Man of Steel movie. I'm talking about back in the 1930s.
Okay.
When he first debuted.
Okay.
I'm going all the way back. So, if you're not even an avid comic book hero or fan, you know that Superman is Superman. He's from Krypton. Like I could go out to anybody, hey, where's Superman
Sure.
from? He's
Yeah.
from Krypton. Where's Clark
So
Kent
just
from?
in the public, I think you would still get Kansas.
You think so?
Yeah. Have you ever driven through Metropolis, Kansas? It exists.
It does,
I've
and it
driven
is
through it,
amazing.
and there's a gigantic Superman statue
because I have
outside
a
of town.
Superman
Yeah,
museum there.
it's awesome.
But I've never been there. It's on my bucket list, by
Yeah.
the way. So
I didn't get to stop.
Oh.
I
Well,
know.
if any of our Patreon listeners want to contribute to a trip out there,
Ooh, there we go.
that
I'll
would
keep
be
dreaming.
amazing.
Yeah.
Tangent.
The question is who we interpret,
Right.
Yeah,
Superman.
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
not who he objectively.
And
Yes.
I think that's
And what makes that? Which one provides more interesting storytelling? Because like we're trying to boil down what the problem of Superman here is, right? So
I think them both together is what creates such good storytelling, because one without
Hmm.
the other is Superman without Clark is now this god
Godly
character,
character,
right.
that has no his moral. I'm not saying that he's moralist, but they won't be grounded
Mhm.
with anything. But now that you have Clark, now he's got those morals that are grounded by his parents.
his upbringing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like in Blade Runner when they're making the replicants and they and they implant them with memories because the memories make them more easy to control because that provides like a background of where a person came from.
this is the first podcast we have not said anything about James Bond,
Yeah,
which I'm very surprised.
actually,
It's
Grant
in there?
Morrison says something about
No, I
Bond,
knew
which
you were
that's
gonna
a pretty
leave
good
that to the
transition.
end. Yeah,
So
there we go.
Grant Morrison wrote All-Star Superman, and he has this very famous story where he had taken that project from DC, and DC was doing this line called All-Star, which was going to put their main heroes, Superman and Batman, back in their like earliest of days. At first, and he was at a Comic-Con, and he saw this guy cosplay as Superman, but he was just like sitting on like some railroad tracks, like just waiting for the con to happen. And the cover of All Star, where Superman's just kind of like sitting on the clouds, that's
what it is.
that guy. So this is Grant Morrison's take on Superman and how he kind of boils it down. This is a long quote, so bear with me, and I'm not going to do his Scottish accent either. So
Damn.
you're welcome. But he says, in the end, I saw Superman not as a superhero or even a science fiction character, but as a story of every man. We're all Superman in our own adventures. We have our own fortress of solitude we retreat to, with our special collections of valued stuff, our own super pets, our own bottled cities that we feel guilty for neglecting. We have our peers and rivals and bizarre, emotional, or moral tangles to deal with. I felt I'd really grasped the concept when I saw him as every man, or rather as the dream self of every man. That S is the radiant emblem of divinity we reveal when we rip off our stuffy shirts, our social masks, our neuroses, our constructed selves, and become who we truly are. Batman is obviously much cooler, but that's because he's a very energetic, adolescent fantasy character. A handsome billionaire playboy in black leather with bullets at his beck and call, better cars and gadgetry than James Bond. There it is. A horde of fetish femme fatales baying around in heels and no boss. That guy is Superman day and night. Superman, on the other hand, grew up baling hay on a farm. He goes to work for a boss in an office. He pines after a hard-working gal. Only when he tears off his shirt does that heroic, ideal inner self come to life. That's actually a much more adult fantasy than the one Batman's peddling, but it also makes Superman a little harder to sell. He's much more of a working-class superhero. And it's this paragraph that really gets me. American writers often say they find it difficult to write Superman. They say he's too powerful, that you can't give him problems. But Superman is a metaphor. For me, Superman has the same problems we do, but on a Paul Bunyan scale. If Superman walks the dog, he walks it around the asteroid belt because it can fly in space. When Superman's relatives visit, they come from the 31st century and bring some hellish monster conqueror from the future. But it's a story about your relatives visiting. So, like, that really kind of got me that you just make some, like, Superman, what'd you do today? You went to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, you went back home, right, to your girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, Superman does the same thing, but on, like, a cosmic scale. So, any thoughts from that quote at all? Or
It's like, what would I do, if I were Superman?
Right.
Go to P.F. Chang's. And I wouldn't go to P.F. Chang's.
I heard that. And that's, to me, that shows, I think that Clark and Peter Parker have a lot more similarities than people would give them credit for. That they're both these kind of everyman characters, Clark Kent still has to, like, pay his rent and everything.
But the thing is, though, he never mentions Clark in this entire paragraph. He just mentions Superman.
Sure, but that's
No,
tomato.
no. That's not tomato. Because we have Superman before we have Clark Kent. We have Peter Parker before we have Spider-Man. Peter Parker is already this kid-loving guy. As soon as you turn the first page, you're already like, I can relate to that so much. I open the book and I see a guy who leaps over tall buildings with a single bound, can stop bullets with his chest. That's not realistic to me.
But that feeds into what you see as the problem with Superman, though, right?
Yes.
Not your perceived way that
No.
Superman should be.
No, but I'm
Okay.
saying that, like, if I was to talk to anybody that I know who is a fan of Superman, who is not a fan of Superman, they're always going to acknowledge that Superman is Superman and not Clark Kent.
And I think they'd be wrong. But
I know, and that's why we're having a great discussion about this.
Yeah.
So he has an identity issue, you know. Is that where like main problem is coming from? Is like nobody can depict him away from Clark Kent or Superman?
That is one of the major things that there's a problem with Superman, because we have so many storylines where we can fall upon Clark as a person. But once we get Superman talking to the public and being in his uniform talking with an individual, it's a more charismatic, it's a more real aspect of being like, man, Superman is coming to my level, not Clark Kent. Superman is coming to my level. Clark Kent is just this one everyday man. And I understand the aspect of being Joe Everyman. You know, I'm going to come to work and whatnot. But Superman coming down to my level, it almost puts a Christianity experience of saying that Jesus would be the one that would walk with me through the...
That he, became flesh. And,
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So...
I mean, put it in like a presidential context or something, though, right? Like you said that when he's making like a public statement, like let's take like Obama. Like I'm sure like behind closed doors when like Obama is talking to Michelle, like there's a different. You see what I'm saying? That like you have your neuroses, your public persona, like Grant Morrison was saying in his quote, that this is the way you're perceived, and Clark creates the Superman identity to like take away from his real self, the public perception of his real self.
I feel like
he creates that.
Clark Kent as a way to get himself away.
That's who he was at first. Like he's Clark in Smallville.
He's Superman to begin with because he knows who he is.
But not to Mom and Pa Kent. I think if you ask them, like he's Clark. If you ask anyone in Smallville, like that grew up, if you ask Lana Lang,
if they didn't give him the name Clark, he's Kal-El and he's Superman.
Right, but they did.
I know, but I'm saying like if my parents never gave me Mike, I'm still Mario. Like I'm always going to be Mario till the day that I die. I'll also always be Mike. He will always be Kal-El and Clark.
Yes.
He's Kal-El first and Clark second.
Subjectively.
Maybe
yeah.
he's Kal-El first, Clark second, and Superman third.
But that ties into being Superman as being Kal-El.
But it's not like that's a Kryptonian persona. Like that's something he creates to be a superhero.
It's not even he creates it.
Right. Yeah. They put the family emblem on him,
Yeah.
and well, down here it's an S. Right. Well, in my world, it stands for hope. Right. So would y'all say, now that we've kind of come to the end here, really, like, did this experiment change how you perceive Superman as a character?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Okay.
it was like I was saying earlier. I didn't see him as this Boy Scout before, but now I kind of do.
Is that a negative context to Boy Scout?
No.
Okay.
What I really mean by that is he always. I don't really even know why I say Boy Scout. I'm really kind of just stealing your term that you stole earlier. But
Well, people call him that.
I
Big
kinda-
Blue Boy
I
Scout.
kind
all
of
the
feel
time.
like I knew
him and Cap.
I kind of feel like I knew what you meant. It's this all around good guy who just makes these good decisions.
Right.
I say good because I guess good is also subjective.
Sure. As Red
even-
Sun also shows you.
Even in Red Sun, he was doing what he thought was the good thing, what he thought was the right thing. So, almost in a way, you could say that Boy Scoutiness about him is negative. But I did not know that about him. I thought he was just this. I never saw him as cocky or anything like that. But I did kind of see him as this kind of just I'm Superman.
Right.
I'm not above,
I know I'm
not
the shit.
Not above you, but I know I'm the shit. I know that I'm, could stop a train with my finger, no problem. But
Faster than a
I
speeding
didn't
bullet.
realize that he was this, that he was just this normal, kid from a small town who
Right.
had these, who have, I don't know. That's why exactly why I think that he is both Clark and Superman.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of him. So, but yeah, definitely. Opinions have changed, and I would say for the better. He's did a lot deeper, character-wise for sure.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Jake?
I'd say that my outlook on him has changed a little bit. My opinion, maybe not so much. He's still a little bit, like, I mean, I grew up in a small town in Alabama, you know? I mean, I get the same morality aspect of, like, him growing up as
Small
Clark.
town morals.
Yeah, and I think I like the idea of Clark Kent more than I like the idea of Superman.
I agree.
You know, and the fact that, like, he basically keeps Clark as a tie to morality. And
Yeah, it's his human anchor.
it's his human anchor, you know, and in Red Son, like, I don't even think they named him in Red Son. Did they?
It's a government secret. What his
his
what
actual
his-
name
right, what his
is.
first
Yeah.
name is.
So
I don't
it's
think I
like,
considered that until just now.
Right.
yeah, so like they didn't give him any sense of like identity except this is who you are. And like I liked Red Son a lot, the paradox at the end, like everything like that. I liked it as a story, but you know, it still didn't give me any sense of like connection to Superman.
Right.
And that was like, you know,
Because
whereas
there
all
is
seasons
there's
Yeah.
no Clark.
There's
It's
no
just
Clark.
Overlord Superman.
Exactly. So like I found a more relatability to Clark than I did to Superman. And I guess that's how my opinions changed on it a little bit. But like, you know, still to Superman, he's unrelatable. You know, you can't touch him.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's just the thing about it.
I like to tell people that before, like, just to kind of boil down Grant Morrison's statement there, whenever I would hear the same, because I hear this all the time, and I'm sure y'all have encountered people that have the same issue with Superman. You know, I would tell people, like, it's not, when you're reading a Superman story, the, like, conflict isn't, can Superman lift this rock?
Yeah.
Right? Because we know he's probably going to lift the rock, right? Even though most other superheroes always lift the rock and stuff too, if you know what I'm saying. But like, there's just like less drama with Superman because of that. But it's not if he's able to lift the rock, it's what does him being able to do that mean for humanity?
Yeah.
Like, how does, like, him leading, how does that affect us? It's like that Jor-El line in Man of Steel, you know, they can be a great people, Kyle. They wish to be. They just lack the light to help show them the way, you know, the hope.
Yeah.
I would say, too, that a series, surprisingly, that, in my opinion, doesn't get enough love, that does a really good job of showing that, again, in my opinion, Clark is the, like, boiled down, like, base person, is the series Lois and Clark from the 90s with Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher. And what's special about that is the only Superman show or media of any kind I can think of, besides, like, Man of Steel, I guess, that doesn't have Superman in the title. Like, Clark is in the title for that, like, because
Yeah.
they clearly wanted to make him a focus. You have something you want to say?
Well, I mean, I was just going to piggyback on that because I feel that Man of Steel was just about Clark becoming the Man of Steel.
Yeah.
So it was almost an origin story, but not an origin story because we already knew that Superman came. You know,
Even though we spend like 20 goddamn minutes on Krypton and that,
Yeah,
watching
and
Russell
everyone's-
Crowe ride like space dragonflies.
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's almost when Lois and Clark came out, it was about Lois and Clark. It wasn't about Superman.
Yeah.
And it was a different aspect during a time that where, like, in the 90s, we were tired. I mean, there were some terrible storylines for Superman in the 90s.
Yeah.
And we were probably gotten over consumed with the fact that we get an all-powerful being. So to have him in that humanized state was great. I understand that completely. In Man of Steel, they did it a little bit too, but the fact that he is Superman, like, yes, we get the glimpse of Clark Kent coming up, we get him finding out his powers, his origin, whatnot, but he's Superman.
Okay.
And this is where we're
gonna have to agree to disagree
I know,
on
we
that
are,
one.
we are.
But see, what I don't understand about your stance is that, like, you acknowledge that makes him a less interesting character.
I do, because I understand that it can be.
Which
Okay.
part makes him a less interesting?
The fact
If
that he's
Superman
Superman.
is the prime person rather than Clark.
But there are aspects of Superman's storyline himself, him being Superman and being that human aspect. Not necessarily Clark Kent being the human aspect, Superman himself being the human aspect. Like in Injustice, Gods Among Us, He's Superman. He's fighting. He realizes he kills Lois. It's not Clark that kills the Joker. It's
Right.
Superman that kills the Joker, and it's Superman that takes over the world and becomes an overlord. It's not Clark Kent. At that point, we're seeing Superman's story being human because he's been raised in human aspect. If someone tricked me into killing my wife, I'm going to kill that person regardless. That is a human aspect of me. I'm going to do that, and then if I think the world
Well, I
is
think
better,
Kryptonians experience, rage the same as humans do.
and I understand the fact that it's tenfold because they have superpowers. on
Sure,
Earth
you
and
can
not
enact that feeling.
I mean, we get that with General Zod, but General Zod is a Kryptonian. He's not a human. He's not us.
yes.
He's an alien. So we're looking at what someone is trying to write an alien to be like a human. So Superman is an alien that's trying to be like a human. That's why he has the Clark Kent persona.
So you agree with Bill at the end of Kill Bill?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I literally could not disagree more.
it's cool though. I understand that
How
though.
uninteresting would a comic be if Superman stopped doing Superman things and went to the Fortress of Solitude
But that's the
and
thing.
hung out with Crypto?
That's pretty much what Kingdom Come is until he comes back.
Sure.
Kingdom Come has this whole aspect of there's no hope for humanity anymore because all these young superheroes are living, or they're flying by the seat of their pants. They have no structure. Back in my day when Superman was in charge of the Justice League, there was structure, people took care of each other, blah, 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 blah.
We had a solid moral compass.
Exactly. When that happens and he comes back, everyone's like, oh my gosh. People still don't trust Superman.
Yeah.
And that the fact that they launched the nuke and Shazam sacrifices himself, killing half the Justice League in the Gulag battle, whatnot. Superman is enraged. That's not Clark Kent. That's Superman. That's Superman's aspect of him portraying his human aspect as well.
I agree, but that Superman has experienced enough loss to that point to have lost his humanity.
So he's Batman.
Which is kind of what the story's about,
So he's
right?
Batman.
No, he's Superman.
But he's Batman.
Because Superman
Yeah,
has
he's Batman.
lost his humanity.
I don't think he's lost it though, because if he had lost it truly, he would never come back.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. But does he find it again with
He
his
does, though.
relationship with Wonder Woman?
He does, and he
Okay.
finds it with this relationship back up with.
So it's love.
Yeah, and hope, because
Okay.
that's what Superman portrays. He portrays
Okay.
hope. When Superman goes, all hope is gone.
But Clark still needs that hope, though, to be Superman.
I don't think so.
I'm gonna trap you.
You can try your hardest, but it's
Seems
not going to
so
work.
opinion based. It's not gonna.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
But I love I respect it completely because I can see what you're saying, and I can agree to it with the point. But the fact that at the end of the day,
which one do you think applies for more? So you're saying that it should be. You're acknowledging the way something is, and not the way it should be.
yeah, so their aspect of Superman has changed since they've read that. I think that's a great story to pick up for anybody that can read Superman and think that they have this aspect of it's Superman, blah blah blah. Clark Kent is a great aspect in Superman's storytelling. That's why I think that Superman as Superman is wrong until you bring Superman to our humanity level, not Clark Kent Superman.
Okay. I think if you want to get rid of this perception from the general public that Superman is this overpowered, unrelatable character, the way to do that is to put Clark first.
You can do that, but you can also do it while he's wearing the suit. and being
Agreed.
Superman.
Agreed.
So that's
Yeah.
why I'm trying to get with you on that.
Sure.
I'm not
But I think
shitting
in his
on your
mind,
idea.
I think in
shitting
his
on your
mind,
idea.
he's still Clark, just being Superman.
I think he's Superman being Clark.
Okay.
And in The Dark Knight Rises, when Batman tells Joseph Gordon-Levitt, it's like, the mask is not for you.
Batman's completely different.
I know that, but I'm
Right.
saying, but the mask is not for you. It's for the people that you love. It's the one you want to protect.
Right.
So the
That's what
mask,
Superman is.
the mask that you actually wear is the one that you portray.
Well, he
not
creates the Superman identity to protect those people.
No, he protects Clark. He portrays Clark Kent to protect who Superman is tied to. Because who is Superman
Who
always
was making
saving?
that decision to make Superman, to create that identity of Superman? Who made that decision?
The writers of Superman.
No, in story context, was it Superman or Clark making that decision?
It's Superman. Because Superman knows he's this all-powerful being. He has to make
Thoughts,
somebody.
Peanut Gallery.
I mean, you're talking from like a lot of knowledge on all these stuff. So I mean, all I can say is from what I
Yeah, no. That's,
think
that's
about
great.
the character.
That's
And for me personally, it seems to me that I don't know. Like I think he's Clark, man. And I think I mean, if the story had started and Clark was first, and then had molded into Superman, would you feel differently?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I can see both sides of the argument just because I know a little bit more. If we're comparing the Spider-Man aspect and Peter Parker,
Are you saying if the story just starts on a boy on a farm in Kansas who like one day is like, man, I can lift this tractor?
we get a hint of
Right.
the fact that this guy is from a different planet, landing on Earth. We don't have anything about the sun giving him
Sure.
power. We don't give any origin story about that fact. We just get that one tidbit of information. He grows up in Smallville. All of a sudden, he's playing 85-pound football, and he just destroys the quarterback. And his mom and dad know, and then that's what will reveal. You have to realize that you're this person first, and this person second. But I think they pitched the fact that he's Clark first and Superman second. At that point. And that's what Peter is. Peter is Peter first, Spider-Man second. But we're introduced to Superman as Superman first and Clark second.
Yeah.
But why does that change your, like... It's fiction, so I can move between it, like from beginning to end. Like
you can do anything you want to
Right.
with Superman. You can do anything you want to with Peter Parker. But I'm just saying, like, the problem with Superman is he's always going to be Superman. He's never just going to be Clark Kent. Like, he will always be
That
Superman.
doesn't mean he always knew it, though. What about when he was 8 years old?
That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to... That's why Superman All Seasons is a great book to pick up on.
Yeah.
Because you get an aspect of Superman that not the general public looks at Superman-wise. You're looking at Clark Kent Superman, not Superman Clark Kent, or just Superman, period.
Yeah.
Like, if you knew Superman, you never know him as Clark Kent. If you knew Clark Kent, you never know him as Superman. You can pick and choose which books to read that changes your opinion about it, and that's
Fair.
why I think there's a problem with it, because you've got new people that are coming into it that have a different aspect of people who have been reading Superman.
Sure, but any
generational
character that
thing.
has 80 years worth of
Exactly.
material to read is going to have vastly varying versions.
Yeah.
You know, how many different versions of like Robin Hood or
Well, how many different
King
versions of
Arthur.
Spider-Man do we have? I mean,
Yeah.
we have a whole series of clones that we don't even know who the real Peter Parker is.
barf?
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. I can understand. The only thing is you don't understand my side of it.
I understand that you feel that Clark is the more I guess it's just getting at it different ways. You're looking at the world as how I guess it is, and I'm looking at the world as how like I think it should be.
But if it
Does that make
should be,
sense?
then it should be the Man of Tomorrow. And Clark Kent is not the Man of Tomorrow. It's
No,
Superman.
I disagree with that because then when you strip Superman of his humanity, Clark Kent, that makes him a non-interesting character.
But if he's going to be the Man of Tomorrow,
Unless it's a Red Sun type character, which is stripped of Clark.
Sure, but the only reason that exists is to show that his humanity like matters, right? Like the humanity informs his acts as Superman.
but we
Keeps
don't.
up from
Without the
taking over
humanity,
everything.
then he's the
Yeah.
overlord.
Yeah.
But we don't want to read a book. We don't want to know a story about an everyman. I mean, we can get that in any sitcom. We can watch Seinfeld and get that out of that.
Yeah, I think we keep getting stories of Everyman though. That there's something universal about that.
What if they created a story where, like Superman finds out about all of this later on in life, as opposed to like as a teenager?
Right, there's different continuity stuff like that.
Yes.
There's some where he does find out as a teenager. There's some where he, like in the Chris Reeves Superman movie, remember he like lifts the truck that Mom and Pa Kent are in like
Yeah.
right out of the freaking spaceship.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's a animated series we're going to be covering in Classic Cartoon Rewind. It's a Superman show from the 80s.
Mhm.
And what this Superman show did was at the end of your like regular Superman adventures, you had a like wacky Clark in Smallville growing up adventure. So it's like Clark's 8th birthday and like the wacky things that happen when like a kid with super breath tries to blow out his candles and
Hits a pinata and the pinata flies.
yeah, that's like basically exactly
just
what
a
happens,
blur.
right? Like
So I have to apologize because I have to backtrack a little bit. When I was talking about Superman Earth 1, he doesn't actually discover his ship. His parents don't discover his ship. The parents tell him, Mom and Pa can't tell him he's from a different planet, tells him he's different. The government actually has his ship. And so it's not until this overwhelming threat comes to Earth and wants to eradicate the last Kryptonian from a dying planet where he understands the fact that he is Superman. He's supposed to protect people. He gets his ship. He gets the Kryptonian knowledge. He's 25 at this point. So there's 3 books at this point. There's book 2 and 3. Book 2 talks about how he fights Parasite, and it's pretty much his first real big challenge because he doesn't know how to use his powers fully.
Right.
And the fact that they're getting zapped is more adaptation. He doesn't know Lois fully yet, so he has a relationship with this person that lives in his building who is a prostitute.
Right.
And then book 3 kind of just expands on that. I don't know if they're writing a book 4, but that's just a different version of where I'm going to give you, if I gave a newbie a book of Superman, that's going to change their opinion of Superman to begin with. I think All Seasons is great for anybody to pick on.
Yes.
Earth 1 is not.
I agree with that, and that's the reason we didn't choose
Exactly.
All Seasons either, is that it's continuity heavy. All Star. It's continuity heavy, and like it references old stuff a lot.
And then you get an aspect of like, well, I mean, I get what Superman's trying to say here, but I don't understand everything that's bringing this backstory. Like the whole, like when you read All Seasons, you get an aspect of Lex, but in All Star, you get this aspect of Lex as always being the bad guy.
Yeah.
So,
well, he does say that like this is a love story between like a man and his city, and I think that shows that same kind of theme with Lex. That if there wasn't a Superman to like distract his attention and his like jealousy, that Lex would be the first son of Metropolis. He would be able to do all these great things, but it's Superman's presence that stops Lex from achieving his best self.
I think that's a cop-out sometimes, though.
On Lex's part?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because if Superman is not
but then
there...
doesn't that just add into it more? Like, well, I would be so great if it wasn't for this asshole flying around.
It's his incompetence.
Yeah. But there's in Superman Doomsday, there's a clip of where Lex is sitting there and he's like, he sends this message to Mercy. He says, I just discovered the cure for cancer. Break it down for a 11-year period and put it out to pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
So, like, you're like, damn, Lex.
Well, he's a capitalist.
Yeah. But it's still, though, like,
America.
we get the fact that, like, if Superman was there, would he have done the same thing? Like, if it wasn't there, if he wouldn't have done the same thing. But since Superman is there now, would he do what he's doing?
Yeah.
But that's another time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyone have any closing thoughts at all? I feel like we kind of...
No, I really enjoyed the books, and I appreciate being
excellent.
Yeah,
on the
Excellent.
podcast.
Yeah. We might need to find some other way to get y'all on the show again here. Do I know?
So I'd be glad to come back.
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Give us more comics to read. We'll
Yeah, we can.
We have plenty.
Exactly. Yeah, we've got some other ones down the pipeline of what we're focusing on. So absolutely. Okay. Well, I think that kind of puts a nice bow on our Superman conversation there. Be sure to join us next week where we're going to. So Detective Comics number 1000 comes out next Wednesday. That's March 27th. So officially have 80 years of Batman. So we're going to be discussing the 1000th issue of Detective Comics and just kind of the current state of Batman in general. Be sure to let us know your opinions of Superman, Clark Kent, who's the real person. You can tweet us at GRC Podcast or our Facebook page, facebook.com/grassrootscomics. I have been your host, Carter Hutchison.
I'm your co-host, Mike Thomas.
And our guests today were...
Michael Claymore, Jacob Pickering.
And we'll see you next week, kiddos. Bye.
This has been a Grassroots Comics production. Da da da. So what's your story?
What are you? Some kind of silly cartoon?
You got a problem with cartoons?